All right, so picture this. You're walking through a forest, right? The sun's coming up. It's like all misty and beautiful.
Yeah.
But you're not just there to like enjoy the view. You're actually checking out the health of the whole place, looking
Yeah.
for signs of animals and making decisions that are going to affect this whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
That's what a gamekeeper does. And today, we're going to help you totally nail that interview so you can
Absolutely.
become one.
Yeah, it's a job where you really need to love nature, but you also got to be able to, think things through. You're like a scientist out there.
Exactly. It's a mix of hands-on and brains. And we've got these awesome guides from RoleCatcher to help us, their career guide and their interview guide, specifically for gamekeepers.
Very cool.
Oh, and we're going to show you how to use their AI platform to make your application, like, totally stand out. Okay, let's jump right in. The interview guide mentions this one. Tell us about a time you had to make a tough decision when it came to managing wildlife. Like, what things did you think about and what happened in the end?
Oh, that's a classic. They want to see how you make decisions.
Yeah.
If you get what's important for the environment and how you handle things when there are a lot of different things to consider.
So it's not just like, oh, there are too many deer, let's just, like, reduce the population.
Right, exactly. You got to explain why.
Got it.
Like, how much can the habitat actually support? What about the other animals?
Yeah.
Diseases, even what's going on with the people nearby. It all matters.
So you'd probably want to mention things like, researching how deer have been managed in that area before.
Yeah.
Talking to experts, maybe even thinking about doing stuff like, changing the habitat or having controlled hunts.
Exactly. And don't forget to tell them what happened after you made the decision.
Right.
And super important, what you learned from the whole thing.
Oh, like maybe you tried some and it didn't quite work out the way you thought, but you learned something from it and you changed your approach.
Totally. That shows you're always learning.
Yeah, yeah. And that's actually something that the RoleCatcher Career Guide really stresses.
Oh, yeah.
A good gamekeeper has to be able to adapt because nature's always throwing curveballs.
Oh, for sure. You can have the best plan, but then, bam, crazy weather, some disease pops up.
Yeah.
You got to be ready to switch things up.
Okay, ready for another question?
Yeah.
This one's from the interview guide. And it seems simple, but I bet a lot of people mess it up.
Hit me.
Why are you so into becoming a gamekeeper?
This is your time to shine.
Okay.
Let them see how much you love this stuff. Tell them why it matters to you personally.
So saying something like, I just love animals, probably isn't going to cut it.
No, not really. Tell them about specific experiences that made you want to do this.
Right?
Like, did you volunteer somewhere? Did you see firsthand how habitats are getting destroyed? Or maybe you just grew up exploring the woods, and that's where you fell in love with nature.
So paint them a picture, like a story.
Yes.
Show them this isn't just some random hobby for you. It's like a deep passion you've had for a long time.
Exactly. And you know what? This is also a good time to talk about skills you have that might be helpful, even if they're not directly related to wildlife. Like maybe you're good with data that's super useful for keeping track of animal populations.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or maybe you're awesome at talking to people. That's huge for working with landowners and the public.
Oh, and speaking of showing off your skills, we should mention RoleCatcher's AI platform.
Oh, right.
They can help you tailor your application to each specific job you're applying for.
Yeah, their AI looks at the job description and suggests ways to tweak your resume and cover letter.
It's like having your own career coach.
Totally.
Now, let's get into a question that really tests how well you understand the challenges gamekeepers face. They might say, okay, imagine you're managing this deer population, but there are way too many for the habitat to handle. What are you going to do about it?
This is where you got to show them, about population dynamics and how to come up with a plan that's not just a quick fix, but something that's good for the ecosystem in the long run.
So it's not just about getting rid of deer. It's about understanding why there are so many in the first place.
You got it. Maybe their habitat isn't so good anymore, not enough food, or maybe there aren't enough predators around.
Yeah.
You might have to fix the habitat, maybe do some controlled hunts, even think about things like contraception or moving some deer to another area.
Sounds like there are a lot of options.
Exactly. And you want to show them you can think about all the different sides of the problem, the ecological side, and what people think, too.
It's like you have to be a scientist, a negotiator, and a nature lover all at the same time.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And having some real-world experience, even if it's just volunteering, can really help here. Have you ever helped restore a habitat or counted animals for a survey? Even just watching animals in the park can give you insights you can talk about.
And if you can't remember some specific technique or something, that's where RoleCatcher's AI can come in handy.
Oh, totally.
It's like having a library of wildlife management info right there.
That's so helpful.
All right, one last question for this part of our deep dive. This one's about ethics, which gamekeepers sometimes have to deal with.
Okay, let's hear it.
They might ask, what would you do if people were really divided about a wildlife management decision, like a program to control predators?
Ooh, good one. That's to see how you communicate, how
Yeah.
you deal with people who have different opinions, and if you can make decisions that are ethical.
So it's like balancing what's good for the environment with what people want.
Exactly.
And sometimes those things clash.
Right. Start by saying that you get that it's a complicated issue, and you understand that not everyone's going to be happy.
So you might say something like, I know that predator control is a touchy subject. I'd handle it carefully and be really open with people.
Perfect. Then you can talk about how you'd gather information and talk to people. Would you hold public meetings, do surveys, or maybe create educational materials to explain why you need to control the predators?
It shows that you're willing to listen and learn and try to find a solution that works for most people, even when they have strong opinions.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to talk about your own values. Do you think it's important to minimize harm to individual animals? Are you all about using scientific data to make decisions? Be honest and upfront about what you believe is right.
And RoleCatcher's AI can help you tailor your answers to match what the organization you're applying for cares about.
Right. It's all about finding the right fit.
So we've covered a lot, but we have even more tips on how to leave a great impression on those interviewers. Stay tuned.
Definitely. All right, let's get back to those gamekeeper interview questions. Okay, so you're in the interview, and they throw this at you. Tell me about a time you had to balance the needs of wildlife with what, say, hunters or landowners wanted. How did you handle it, and what happened?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. It's not just textbook knowledge. It's about dealing with real-life situations where everyone wants different things.
Yeah, exactly. They're looking for critical thinking, good communication skills, and the ability to find solutions that work for both the animals and the people involved. You got to start by explaining the situation and what the different sides wanted. Was it about hunting rules, habitat use, or maybe people worried about damage to their property?
Okay, so let's say there are too many deer. And they're getting into the farms, and the landowners want something done. But you also know that killing too many deer could mess up the whole ecosystem.
Right. That's a tough one. So first, you got to show them you get both sides. You understand why the landowners are upset, but you also got to explain what could happen if you just go and kill a bunch of deer.
I see. So it's about finding that balance.
Exactly. Then you talk about how you figured things out and what you did.
So you talk to wildlife experts.
Yeah.
Right, to see how the deer are impacting things.
Right.
And you talk to the landowners to hear their concerns, and then maybe you'd look at options like fences, things to keep deer away, or maybe even work with hunters to have a controlled hunt.
Exactly. Working with different people is key. Did you get the community involved, maybe have meetings? Did you present some, data and recommendations? Did you help people talk it out and find some common ground?
Yeah, showing you can handle those people skills is important while still focusing on managing the wildlife responsibly.
Yes. And don't forget to tell them what happened in the end. Did you find a solution that made most people happy? Did you set up a way to keep track of things and see if it was working?
And this is where RoleCatcher's AI feedback can be so helpful. You can plug in your answers, and it'll give you suggestions on how to make them even better.
Oh, yeah, it's like a secret weapon.
It can point out skills and experiences that will really impress the interviewer.
Right. It can help you show off your best side. Okay, let's move on to another question they might ask. Tell us about your experience with managing habitats. What techniques are you familiar with, and how would you use them to make a specific area more biodiverse?
Okay, so it's not just about knowing the theory. You need to have some practical experience.
Exactly. Think about projects you've worked on or techniques you've learned about. You want to show them you can actually apply this stuff.
So it's not enough to just say, I know about controlled burns and getting rid of invasive plants. You need to give them an example, right? Like a real plan.
Yep. Pick a specific habitat, maybe a grassland, a forest, or a wetland, and tell them how you'd manage it. What are the problems with that habitat? What techniques would you use first and why?
Okay, so let's say you're dealing with a meadow that's kind of run down. You could talk about getting rid of invasive plants, planting wildflowers that'll attract pollinators, and making brush piles for small animals to live in.
Exactly. Explain how each thing you do will help make the area more biodiverse. You could even mention specific plants you'd choose, when you do each thing, and how you'd keep track of the results.
That's like painting a picture for them, showing them you can turn your knowledge into action.
And don't forget to mention that you need to keep checking on things and be ready to change your plans if needed. Nature is always changing.
Right, like if you do a controlled burn,
Mm-hmm.
you need to see how it affects everything and maybe adjust your approach next time. And this is where RoleCatcher's AI can help too.
Oh, yeah, totally.
It has all the latest research and best practices for habitat management.
So you can stay up to date on what works best. It shows you're always learning. Okay, one last question for this segment. This one's about ethics again, something gamekeepers often face. They might ask, how would you handle it if the public was split on a wildlife management decision, like if you needed to control predators?
Oh, this is about more than just the science, isn't it? It's about people's feelings and beliefs.
Yeah, you got to show them you can handle that too. You got to explain that you get why people have different opinions and that you can't always please everyone.
So you might say something like, I understand that controlling predators is a sensitive issue, and I'd be respectful and transparent in how I handle it.
Exactly. Then you talk about how you'd gather information and talk to people. Would you have public meetings, surveys, or maybe create educational materials to explain why you need to control the predators?
It's about showing them you're willing to listen, learn, and try to find some common ground, even when people have strong opinions.
Yes. And don't be afraid to talk about your own values, too. Do you believe in minimizing harm to individual animals?
Mm-hmm.
Are you all about using scientific data to make decisions? Be honest and upfront about what you believe is right.
And RoleCatcher's AI can help you tailor your answers to match what the organization you're applying for cares about. It's all about finding the right fit, both in terms of skills and values.
Okay, we've covered a lot, but we have even more tips on how to really impress those interviewers and make them remember you. We'll be right back.
All right, we're back, and we're in that final stretch of getting you ready for that gamekeeper interview. We've gone through those tough questions, those real-life dilemmas, and now it's time to polish everything up and make sure you really shine.
Yeah, these final touches are important. It's not just about, listing your qualifications. It's about showing them how passionate and dedicated you are, how much you love this whole field.
Okay, let's start with something people often forget. Body language. It's easy to get nervous in an interview,
Oh, yeah.
but things like sitting up straight, making eye contact, and looking confident can make a big difference.
It's like when you're watching a wild animal. Would you trust an animal that's all skittish and won't look at you? Probably not. Same goes for interviews. Being confident and showing your enthusiasm tells the interviewer you're not just qualified, but you're also comfortable and excited about the work.
So be like that confident predator. Now let's talk about asking good questions. It's not just about answering their questions. It's about showing you're interested, curious, and want to learn more about the job and the organization.
And don't just ask those generic questions like, what's it like to work here? Come prepared with a few questions that show you've done your research and you're specifically interested in what they do. You could ask about their current habitat restoration projects, how they involve the community, or even the biggest challenges they face in managing certain wildlife populations.
Those are great examples. Okay, here's a tip that might seem weird. Don't be afraid to admit if you don't know something.
Yeah, that's right. No one expects you to know absolutely everything about wildlife. If they ask about a technique you've never used, just be honest. But then say you're eager to learn. You could say, I'm not familiar with that method yet, but I've read about it and I'd love to learn more.
It shows you're humble, self-aware, and always willing to learn, which are all important for a gamekeeper. And speaking of learning, let's bring back RoleCatcher one last time. Their AI platform isn't just for interview prep. It can be super helpful throughout your whole career as a gamekeeper.
Absolutely. Use it to stay up to date on what's happening in the field, research new techniques, connect with other professionals, and even explore different career paths.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, remember, landing a job as a gamekeeper isn't just about having the right qualifications on your resume.
It's about showing them how passionate you are, how much you know, how dedicated you are to conservation, and how you can think critically and make good decisions in tough situations. It's about showing them that you're not just good at the job, but you truly care about the natural world.
Don't be afraid to let that enthusiasm shine. There's a whole wilderness out there waiting for dedicated people like you.
Best of luck with your interview, and remember, we're here to support you along the way.
Until next time, happy trails.